Hello, guys. So, this is week 2 of learning from home because of coronavirus. So, yeah, so we're gonna continue on the series. We're gonna learn the intro. We're gonna finish learning. Last week we finished learning part 1, and this week we're gonna finish learning part 2 and part 3. I'm gonna write it down on a notepad and try to write it as easy as possible for you guys to understand. So, yeah, here we go. So, first, we'll recap what we learned last week. So, last week we learned the part 1 of the intro, right? And part 1, you guys see it? Remember, that's what we did last week? We said 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and so on, right? And then the last part, and there was a hard part in the beginning there. 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so that was part 1. That was just a quick recap of what we did last week. And so we're gonna learn part 2 today. Part 2, very similar to part 1, except so this is part 1. Okay, and then this is gonna be part 2. You might not notice the difference. One second. You might not notice the difference at first, but if you can see, all these threes are here. All these threes, they're underlined. So what that represent is like a little tap, like a little grace note. You're not supposed to hear it too loud, but you're still supposed to play it, right? Shouldn't just ignore those notes. So yeah, so those are supposed to be grace notes, and if I were to tell you how that sounds, it goes like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and then this 3, there's a little tap. It's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And then it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And all these threes right here, there's gonna be a little tap. So it's a little harder than part 1, but it's not that bad. Alright. So yeah, that's part 1. I mean, my bad. That's part 2. And then I'll show you guys how to play it. One second. Alright, so here's part 2. I'll show you guys part 1 just as a reminder one more time. Alright, so here's part 1. Okay, so that was part 1. And I'm mirroring you guys, by the way. So when I play my left hand, you guys should play your right hand. So, and then part 2. This is part 2. Ready? So part 2 goes like this. Yeah. Let me try that again. Part 2. I think I might have messed up at the end. Ready? It's hard mirroring. Never really perform while I'm mirrored. So here we go. One more time. Part 2. Oh boy. I was playing part 1. Alright, part 2. One more time. My bad. Sorry. Alright, ready? Part 2. Yep. That was part 2. Okay. It's very similar to part 1, but there's a little grace note for every 3. Whenever we say 3, there's a little grace note. Okay? Yeah. And then in case you guys feel like maybe that was a bit too fast here, I'll play a little slower. Part 2. Yep, so that was part 2. All these threes, you hit grace notes. Okay. Alright, so now we're gonna get into the more challenging one. Part 3. Alright, All right, this is part 3, and here it is. So part 2, it was just same thing with part 1 with the grace notes, but part 3 is the same thing as part 2 with 2 extra notes every measure. What I mean by that is in part 1 there was at the last segment when we played 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 1 2, that part. The little 2 and in the beginning, we're gonna add that to every single measure. So if we look at part 3, so this is gonna be that's how part 3 is gonna look. So as you can see, it's gonna be 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3. Yeah, so that's part 3. And if you guys can see, so basically for part 3 we're gonna play it on all of these beats. 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2. We might play one we might just hit it, or we might play like little grace notes like these threes, and yeah, we might play like that, except the only rests are right here when they're on these twos. These are rests right here. So basically, yeah, these two are rests and everything else we're playing. This is actually a little bit modified from how we're supposed to play part 3, but then this is just so that we can get to understand what part 3 actually is. Okay, so this is part 3. Yeah, I'll show you guys how to play it in a sec. Okay, I'll show you guys how to play part 3. Okay, here we go. This is part 3. So it's like, so yeah, that was part 3. I'll play a little slower for you guys, and see if you guys can follow along. Ready? I'll say the rhythm as I play as well. 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3. Yeah, it's like that. Okay. Yeah, so that was part 3. I showed you guys a little modified version of part 3. And that was to show what it is. That was to show what part 3 is. But the real version might be a little tricky. I'll show you guys that right now. So the real version of part 3 is same all the way through except the last line. On the last line, we play 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3. That's how I just taught you guys. But then what we actually play is 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 3 and 4. Oh, nope, not 3 and 4. But wait 1 second. So the real version of part 3, it's the same thing. First 3 lines, 1 2 and 1, right? Until we get to the last line. The same up to here, but then once we get to here, oh, there's supposed to be a 3 there. Yeah. So once we get to here, it's 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 and like that. So that might be a little confusing, right? 1 2 and 1 2 3 1 2 and 1 2 3 and like that. So yeah. So here might be a little hard to understand, but I'll try to see if I could play it for you guys. Oh, I should have done this since the beginning. So It's like that, right? Oh, how am I gonna do this? 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, and. Okay, so it's like, all right. If you guys can see, just play along with me. So it's like 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, and then after that, so that's how we finish part 3. And then after that, we're supposed to go into part 4, right? So yeah, so that's part 3, part 2, and part 3. So recap. This is I'll recap starting from part 1. So this is part 1 right here. There's a lot of rests and a lot of not difficultness in part 1. Okay, so this is part 1. It goes like this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So that was part 1. And if we go right here, this is part 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Oh, 1 second. That was my mistake. So part 2 goes like this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So that's part 3. My bad, part 2. And if we go down a little further, so this is part 3. So if I play the whole part 3 for you guys, it sounds like this: 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. Yeah. That last line might be a little confusing. Play that for you guys one more time. Ready? 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3. So yeah. So this whole video, I mirrored you guys. So whenever I played my left hand, you guys should follow along with your right hand, and vice versa. So yeah. So we did part 1, part 2, and part 3. So I'll just show you guys everything. Part 1, part 2, and part 3, all at the same time. So I'll just have part 3 up on the screen, but I'll play starting from part 1 all the way up to part 3. Here we go. And I won't say much, just to show you guys how it sounds. Actually, no, I'll keep the rhythm. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, I feel like that was a bit confusing because I was just playing, right? So what I did there was, yeah, just all part 1, part 2, and part 3 at the same time. But if that was confusing, yeah, earlier I played part 1, part 2, and part 3 all at separate times. So yeah, I think you guys should watch that and then go from there. So this week we learned part 2 and part 3. Last week we learned part 1, and next week we're gonna learn part 4. And yeah, well, I'll see you guys then, and be safe. Don't go out too much, and yeah, see you guys next week. Bye.